Hello fellow woodworkers, and welcome to this week's edition of the Garage Workshop. And in this week's video we're going to be revisiting a build from earlier in the year and replacing my chicken nest box. Roll the intro. So the first stage in any build is obviously a little bit of demolition, which is what I did here in taking off the old laying box. First of all, I measured it because I wanted to make sure I had accurate measurements all the way around, and then I deconstructed the box, and actually you'll see some of the wood used later on. And then started with the stubwork timber. For this build, I sort of built it around a frame of CLS, just basic CLS studwork timber. And I really wanted to make sure that I got all the measurements nice and neat, so I did it, triple checked it, and then I did some cuts on my mitre saw to get them all laid out exactly the right size. Interestingly, I think I mentioned this in a previous video, since I had this new setup with my mitre saw, it's worked so much better, being able to put in different stop blocks and use it in a much different way to how I used it before. The only problem is there's a little lip, you probably just saw it there. And I also recycled some of the wood. You can see there's already some drill holes in this wood. So it didn't cost me a lot, this project. It was just literally a bit of plywood and some CLS stubwork timber, which again is still expensive, but not over the top really. So when I had all the 4 pieces together, I just offered them up to make sure that they all fitted properly. I then did some pocket holes, quite a few pocket holes in this video, and it actually makes me think I've seen quite a lot of YouTubers lately that have got sort of jigs built for their pocket hole devices, their Craig pocket hole things. So I think that might be a future project for me, because I have to keep getting it out and putting it away again. I then offered it up when it was all nice and level. I just hooked it together using the pocket holes that I had previously drilled. I have to say I was really pleased because it was some of the wood was a little bit sort of kinked, but hooking it together really helped. I then moved on to plywood. This is just some 18mm ply that I had lying around, and these are going to be the sort of side struts that the actual nesting box is going to lay against, as it were. You'll see a bit more in a minute what I mean about that. And then I just wanted to use some OSB because I had it lying around, and for this I just think OSB is quite smooth. It doesn't splinter very easily, which, considering it's going to be the chicken's backsides mainly that's going to be on it, I want to make it as neat as possible for them. So that was just the sort of sides and the back, as it were, that I was just trimming down. Again, these are just bits of OSB actually that I took out of a skip when they were building a local coffee shop near me. I then offered them up, pretty good, except on one side I was a little bit out, but I knew I could correct that later, so it didn't worry me. I then pre-drilled all of the holes, just to make sure nothing split. Obviously you've got to be careful when you're working with CLS timber that it does have a tendency to split if you're not careful. And I'm using the little drill bits that I got when I was in the States. They're really good, those little drill bit holders. Really good, make some really clean holes. Then it was just a case of gluing and hooking it together, and as I said, this is sort of the first part of this. You'll see in a minute when I came to hook it together, I just needed a tiny little piece of wood to go in the side. I then went on to make, these are the sort of dividing struts. Apologies for the awful view there. These are just the dividing slots that are going to go in between the sort of laying compartments within the laying box. And that's another reason why I think this video is good for people, you know, who don't have chickens, although everyone should have chickens. If you haven't, there's a lot of skills and techniques here that you can use and apply to other projects. So these dividers just split that space into 3, but I wanted them to be removed as well, because sometimes the boxes will be bigger and sometimes they'll be smaller. It just really does depend on chickens, to be honest. But I hooked them all together. I used those weights. I've mentioned those before. I got those weights on sale in Aldi, absolute bargain, and they're really good at jobs like this where you just want to weigh something down just until the glue sets. So I did it on both sides, got both of the sort of rails that the dividers were sort of sitting in between, got them where I wanted them, and then I just popped in a couple of nails there. You can see my nail gun was there, and that was just on top as a sort of extra bit. I then added it to the two sides. Again, I did quite a lot of this sort of dry mocking up to make sure everything fitted. I just popped some angle clamps on it, and I was really happy with how it looked. And then I just slipped in the back piece. You can see I've just got two bits of sort of scrap MDF there. That's because there was a little bit of a gap, but I wasn't too worried about it. And obviously doing something like this is really difficult when you're on your own. But I got there in the end with my clamps, and I was happy with how everything was looking and how everything was sitting. I then went inside because I wanted to leave it to glue up overnight. So I wanted to move the sort of operation inside, as it were, and I screwed the screws in, and I attached the sort of side, the front and back as you're looking at it. I was happy with how it all went together. So this part of the sort of official fixing just gave me the opportunity to let everything dry overnight, which I don't always do, to be honest. I'm guilty of sort of trying to move on a bit too quick. But when the glue was on that side, I just hooked in a few nails. I have to say my nail guns worked a little bit better. I used some Bic nails in it, which I know sounds odd, but actually they work really well. But the gun does still have a problem, but they did work better. So I'm just wedging in there a little piece, you can see, and then I'm attaching the sides to the back, as it were. When all of that was on and I was happy, I just offered up and glued up what is essentially the back of the laying box, but it sort of looks at the top. You have to remember this is sort of facing down, and that frame is the bit that's going to actually be attached to the rest of the coop. But what I was pleased about was it was all a really, really good fit. So when I took the clamp on, I just left it overnight to dry after I'd tacked in a few nails. I think these are 25mm nails, not massive. It's more keeping it together while it's gluing. The other thing is the perspective on this shot makes it look like it's wrong, and on the left it's bigger than the right. It actually isn't. It's just the funny way I think that I positioned the camera that it looks like that. When it had dried for a couple of minutes, I just came back and put some more nails in from the side, just to get it all nice and secure while the glue dried. Then the next morning I came in to check I hadn't stuck anything to the table and that it was all good and strong, which it was. You can see me here just going through my little wood selection pile to find a thin piece of MDF that would fit down and sort of wedge down that side. When I did it, I just took it to the miter saw and hooked it off. I need to do something about the miter saw dust collection. As you can see, dust is coming out everywhere. It's not good, so I'm going to have another play with that. There is the little piece of wood just being persuaded in with my Thor hammer, and then I just added a couple of screws to sort of hook it in. And when I fixed it up, I just run a little bead of sealant. It was at this point that I thought I just put a couple of sort of cross braces, is how I'm referring to them. So I just pocket hold a couple of bits. Again, I haven't really attached these. They're more to sort of sit on the frame underneath to provide support rather than anything else. But when I came to do the, in a minute, when you see the featherboard in the side, they do sort of come across these. And actually the featherboarding on this project is the thing I think I'm most proud of, because I really took my time and sort of cut in all the featherboarding, and I was really pleased with how it went. And all of the featherboard that you can see me use here, you can see it's already coloured, has all come off one of the previous incarnations I should say, of one of my other nesting boxes or laying boxes, because I've made a few now. So I just hooked them all together. I pre-drilled everything. That was one of the mistakes I made the last time I did this, not pre-drilling, and I split a lot of the featherboard. This was a design actually my daughter did on the side. It was the egg. It's on the old box, and due to the power of recycling, I was able to use it again. I was just cutting all of those edges around. You can see it's cut around that strip on the side. And then that strip that's there is because I had a sort of slightly bigger gap than I anticipated, and I didn't want to leave it. So I just put a little strip in and then laid the wood on the top. That was the only one I had to do it with. I don't know what happened there, but the rest of it was absolutely fine. Just hooked it all together, And then I took it outside because we actually had the sun out, even though it's the United Kingdom. And I started hooking everything together on the sort of final side. So you can really see the box taking shape now. I cut in all of those sort of feather boards so they match perfectly. I then went on to cutting down the OSB. This was the biggest sheet of OSB I had, and luckily it was just big enough. So I cut down the OSB, and this was to form the lid. Then got some roofing felt I had left over, strangely enough, from the last time I did a chicken coop, which doesn't feel like it was that long ago. And I just literally cut it out. I didn't use the adhesive this time, which I'd used previously. I did still have some of it lying around, but to be honest, I really didn't enjoy using that. I didn't think it really added any value to it. It didn't make it any stickier. And I just found it really hard to work with. So when I've got this all folded to the right side, I've deliberately left a bigger sort of flap on the right hand side as you're looking, because that's going to be part of where the lid joins the chicken coop, which you'll see in a minute. I then tacked it all together using the little galvanized tacks. Put quite a lot in, as you can see. I did sort of draw pencil lines to make sure they were all straight. You can probably see that in the top of the video. I just didn't want to bash them anywhere. I wanted to keep them fairly uniform, which I did. And when I'd done that side and I was happy with it all fixed in, I then just literally popped it over, turned the thing over, and did the same thing underneath. In the meantime, I went and actually attached the main sort of part of the box to the chicken coop. You can see the chickens underneath, keeping an eye on me, checking out what I'm doing. And it went in really nicely. There were a couple of little gaps on the inside, which I anticipated because I'd taken bits of wood off when I'd taken the coop off. You can just see me there drilling the bottom rail. That's just to cover the gradient difference between this coop laying box and the one I had previously. And then I just attached the little slithers of wood. You can sort of see on the right hand side there a little gap where the two boxes meet, and I just cut a couple of little strips of MDF. There they are. I'm just attaching them just to sort of change that gradient really and keep it all together, and it also helps to keep it fixed in place, which is really important. The next stage was to attach some tiny little galvanized brackets. You might be able to see them in my little drawer there. Now, I only put one on either side and screwed it in. I didn't put them sort of both sides. I just don't think they need it for what they are. And then I offered up the roof, and to start with, I did put the hinges on, and I attached the hinges, but as you'll see at the end of the video, the hinges weren't a massive success. So I just laid it up. I screwed in this batten just to sort of stop any water ingress down the side, and when I'd done that, I then went back to the nails and they're clout nails, I think they're called. I just went and nailed it all. Now the only thing I didn't do in the video, which I have done since, is just put some sealant all around the edge, just to make sure no water gets in. And we've had quite a lot of storms so far, and touch wood, it's been really good, no leaks at all. So fellow woodworkers, the new nesting box is finished, as you can see. Got a slight issue with the hinges that are on here. For some reason I just can't get them to stay. I think it's because I can't get a long enough screw in without either piercing this or piercing the wood on the inside. So at the moment I'm just going to leave it with the hinge of the felt. It doesn't need a lot anyway, and then I'm going to run some straps on the inside just to stop it going anywhere. But overall I'm pleased with how it's turned out. As with all these sort of things, even if you don't have chickens or you don't need to build a nesting box, there's a lot of skills here I think that you can transfer into your own woodworking projects. I am just going to run a little bit of seal along here, because when I took that wood out I tried my best to obviously reseat it, but there is a little bit of a gap. But overall I'm really pleased. I think it's come out exactly as I wanted it to. I'd give it a sort of 7 out of 10. I have a feeling I'll be back replacing this at some point, if only the lid, but for now, really pleased with how it's worked out. So thanks for watching the video. I hope you stayed all the way through. Quite a long one, but there was quite a lot involved in this. If this is your first time at the Garage Workshop, thanks for watching. Please can I ask you to subscribe, like and comment. If you're a regular viewer, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you on next week's edition of the Garage Workshop. Don't forget, like and subscribe. Take care.